Today we're diving into the topic of sports and Web3. Can Web3 fix the broken aspects of football, or is it too broken itself to make a difference? We all know that fan engagement is the backbone of the sports industry. And as for NFTs and Web3, they're all about harnessing the power of communities. So it looks like a match made in heaven, but things aren't so perfect at the moment. To discuss the topic in more detail, I spoke to Jean-Charles Gaudechon, CEO of OneFootball Labs and former Vice President of Electronic Arts. He is a firm believer that we are at the beginning of a sports revolution. He shared with me how they're planning to revolutionize the football experience with OneFootball Labs, and why he thinks Web3 is the future of sports and gaming. So without further ado, let's listen to what JC's got to share, and I warn you, he hates the term NFTs.
Welcome to The Product Show. Insightful interviews with founders and tech leaders sharing how they hack product growth.
Hi JC, you're the CEO of OneFootball Labs, a joint venture between Animoca Brands, OneFootball and Liberty City Ventures. You're building a platform aiming to bring the football experience into Web3. But before we dive deeper into what you guys are doing at OneFootball Labs, I want to find a little bit more about your time at Electronic Arts. For people who are not familiar, Electronic Arts are one of the global leaders in digital entertainment and gaming. They're the company behind FIFA, NBA Live, and many world-famous games. You spent there 16 years. And most recently, you were the vice president of their Asia studio. So tell me a little bit more about the factors that contributed to your decision to stay there for such an extended period of time. I think it says a lot about you, not only about the experience you're gaining, but also about you as a person.
So basically, yes, I spent almost 16 years at EA. Some people say that, this is big companies where you kind of get comfortable and stay for a long time. For me, it was slightly different. Well, first, it was a dream to be making games. I'm a software engineer. I've got a master's in computer science. But I wanted to make games. I knew it from very early. And that was almost like 25 years ago. Doesn't make me younger, but, that's actually, I'm a veteran now in the industry. And I had a chance basically to start on FIFA, because I'm a massive football fan, and because, it was just a dream to be on that. It was the time where Konami, Pro Evo, Pro Evolution Soccer was probably the best game out there. But EA gave me a chance in Vancouver. And I wasn't even there for the diploma ceremony at my engineering school. I was already gone and trying to work at EA. And basically, I had a chance to get into it and started my career there. So I'll be, I'll be forever thankful to EA to give me a chance. And then I started on FIFA in Vancouver studio. But then what I did to kind of reinvent myself all throughout my career at EA was to change studios and always to learn and always to work on new games and on all platforms. So I had a chance to work on FIFA for the longest time, but also Need for Speed, Battlefield, many other, large IPs, which was just fantastic to work for.
What are some of the most valuable lessons that you learned there and, that you took with you and now you're applying at OneFootball Labs?
Yeah, well, I've learned this is really where I learned a lot about product development. You may or may not like, EA's products. It's an entertainment industry, right? So you may love it, you may not. But, I've learned so much on just the creative process of developing a video game. Obviously the business process, that basically all parts of making a game. And to me, that's always been, kind of my quest in order to kind of go into a new studio, because every studio is completely different. When you think EA, the studio in Sweden, DICE making Battlefield, or the studio in Vancouver making FIFA are completely different studios. There's a bit of a common denominator, but you learn complete different approach again on the creative process, but also just the whole, product development cycle. So to me, that's really the biggest things I've learned is around product development, obviously. When it comes to really things that I keep with me, well, it's about there's nothing more important than time. I would always say that to me. There is, it's usually, money, quality, time. And there's one, that really gives you the quality is time. And you can't, in any industry or product industry, I find at least, kind of creative product industries, nothing replaces time. And the time that you've got to really come up with the right concept and then go through every stage of development, but taking the time every time to ask yourself the right questions. Are you building the right thing? Are you answering a real need to, consumers, players, etc.? To me, I think that's the biggest lesson, or something I try to apply every morning when I go to work.
You became the CEO of OneFootball Labs in August 2022, if I'm not wrong. Why were you the best person for the job? Is it mainly your involvement in FIFA? But what else? What other soft skills did you bring with you?
Well, good question. I think, we should ask the person that hired me, or actually gave me, or kind of the consensus of shareholders that found that I was the right person. I think to me, it's a mix. It's a mix of creative vision, knowing what products to build, and business acumen. I think that comes, with especially my last gig when I was running Asia for Asia studios for EA. I had studios all throughout Asia and many different products like FIFA Mobile, in Shanghai, FIFA Online, which is PC free to play in Korea, and many others. And working also very closely with partners like Tencent, etc., for the distribution of our games. So I think it's a mix of understanding product vision, or at least hoping that I kind of have a pretty good idea of what a good, kind of football game looks like, whether it's powered by blockchain or not. Here, the beauty is like, there's the Web3 component to it, which I'm coming in very humble, because that's not something I've learned at EA. But of course, I've always been very close and understanding that space, or trying to understand that space. And of course, the business acumen that you need in order to run, a company, a team, and a business.
Tell me a little bit more about OneFootball Labs. What exactly you guys are doing for people who are not familiar? Give me the elevator pitch.
Yeah, no. So OneFootball Labs basically is the arm of OneFootball, mostly as the biggest investor into that JV, but also working closely with that LCV, as I said, and then Animoca to build the best possible Web3 football experiences. And it goes basically from gamification to full-on games. The way we started, and when I came in August, a lot of that development started already, was a lot more around, a digital video moments collection. And that's been kind of the first dip into the Web3 pool is, through the DVMs, which is the model of Dapper, for the ones that know NBA Top Shot as an example. So the idea very much was to, and still is, to adapt this DVR or build experiences around these digital video moments and allow people to then own moments of football, get football much closer to their fans. Interestingly enough, OneFootball motto has always been no one gets you closer. And interestingly enough, that's exactly what we'd be trying to do here, because yes, you're a spectator of football, yes, you can watch games on TV, etc., but do you own a piece of the cake to a certain extent? And when you think of it, Web3, we all know that, or people close to it, has a chance to give you maybe a tiny piece of that cake, but a bigger one, and very interesting ways for you to consume your passion.
Right, so let's talk a little bit more about digital collectibles, which has been there has been a huge hype around them in the last year, perhaps. So what do I own as a fan when I purchase a moment? So a moment, for people who are not familiar, they're a little bit like a cross between a TV highlight and it's like an old school a collectible card that we used to collect when we were children.
Yes.
So what do I own as a fan? I don't really get it. I mean, I don't feel like I owe anything other than putting something in my wallet and just claiming, oh, this is who I am. This is what I'm passionate about.
So here's a very interesting, I think, comparison you can make in order to understand what it means to own, a piece of football or a piece of game or whatever that experience is. You take FIFA Ultimate Team in FIFA, which is something I know quite well, which is basically kind of the heart of FIFA when it comes to, hardcore gamers and people that get, like me, very intense about FIFA. So you buy card packs, you get cards, and you can then put them on a pitch. You can then play with this player, etc., etc. Now, at the end of the season, that card goes away. Whatever you spend, you don't keep.
Right.
What Web3 cannot do at that point, because everything is on the blockchain, is we can't take that away from you to start with. Right. That's when some people say that, no matter the up and down of Web3, that technology will eventually change the world, but change gaming, which is an industry that I know better. And I know that at one point, it's going to change very much the way people consume, play these games, and not just over a year, but over a much longer period of time. If you take the examples, for instance, of MMOs, like the big MMOs, to explain, massively multiplayer online games. Some people have played that, from EverQuest at the time. World of Warcraft is a huge one. And, there's many others. You still don't own a piece of land. You still don't own anything, a weapon, whatever that is, right? So this will then, if you think of it, it's kind of mind-blowing to go and say, okay, what does that mean now for me to own a piece of land? And I'm not talking the sandbox style, even though it works really well, but that's a bit different. Here, you could say that you own a weapon, you craft a weapon, then you can sell, you can trade, etc. And people could say and be like, yeah, we don't need Web3 to do this. Fine. The world has been, doing fine without it. But just ask yourself the question of what it changes if that happens. And that's usually what's super cool about, when you find the right utility, and utility is a super important word for that, then that becomes quite mind-blowing as kind of the changes that can bring. So owning in that case and owning a DVM is owning a piece of moment. So let's say there's like a super good goal scored by, Giroud, the striker of AC Milan. And there's going to be 100 of these moments out there. Well, one of the 100 will belong to me and no one else. Now you could go and say, yeah, okay, but I can go on YouTube and watch the highlight. Yeah, but that's when the utility comes. Because the way, and you've seen that most of the promise of most of these, NFTs, and I'm not a big fan of the term, we can talk about it after, but I think today, in general, the crypto world, the Web3 world hasn't done a great job at, making all these terms easier to understand and for people to go and say, so whatever, we could call that a resource, but that resource that you own could then be used in a game, in another game, on a marketplace. So many different utilities, and today a lot of people need to look at this as what I own has utility in many different ways or in many different projects.
Right. So
I took forever, so I'm going to stop for a sec.
No. It is absolutely mesmerizing listening to your point of view. And I'm sure that our listeners would be really excited to hear this from you. So you mentioned that Web3 is the future of gaming. And I completely agree. But we saw such a huge backlash from the gaming industry and from the hardcore gamers in the last few months. So they're really kind of they're the gatekeepers of old school gaming. So why is that? Why are they not embracing it as opposed to fighting it?
So two things about that. One, I said it will change the face of gaming, but I also don't want to say that it's the future of gaming, right? Gaming still will evolve in many different ways. So I just, it's a bit too black and white for someone, and sometimes the evangelist from Web3 and crypto are like, this is the way. Yeah. Like, no, gaming will still exist in many different ways. But as I said before, right, it can actually change drastically the way people play, consume the games, etc. We're already seeing today in the gaming industry, call it Web2, but just the current, and I'll touch on the backlash right after, but you can already see a lot of this happening. People, whether it's esports, which is a professional gaming, so people want to earn money from playing a game. That's one piece, and that's interesting because that's actually, will evolve. It was one of the first ways for people to become professional, that ecosystem allows, and you could argue that Web3 brings that same idea where people could actually buy, sell, trade, own, things in a game. Now, here's the backlash, and that's exactly from what I said, and I completely understand the backlash. Because gamers will go and say one thing, and I'm a gamer above all. And will say, you're just making it even more a commercial experience. Mm-hmm. You're making everything about money. And gaming is not about money. Or, yes, I buy a game, just let me please play the game. That was the backlash on free-to-play. For good reasons, and I know free-to-play really well. I've done FIFA Mobile, I've done FIFA Online, and I know there's a really good way to do free-to-play. And there's a very broken way of which is nickel and diming, which is feeling after 5 minutes into the game, now pay. And I completely understand gamers there. And I was one of the few saying, well, but trust me, there's a good way to do it, like a real free-to-play game, which actually has the virtue of giving you a chance to play the game and dump it if you don't like it. There's something actually honorable about this. But the problem is the bad ones are like after 5 minutes pay, after 10 pay, after 12 pay. And it's like everything is about, this. And you feel played. You're like, you actually, you don't play the game, you feel played. So I think that's the backlash. And that's when people, when they say Web3, and also Web3 crypto, as we know, didn't have a great reputation over a few years now, unfortunately. Or something very, for gamers, but something very niche on the side that will eventually, are interested about gaming, but could change the nature of gaming. Again, if we look at it this way, backlash. And that happened even when I was at EA. There was discussion around that, and say at one point it was like, should we not? And I think he listened to the community saying, hey, you know what? Fine, we're not going to touch this for now. Ubisoft, when actually started and doing some of that, same thing. I do think, again, that it all comes to the use cases. And it comes to things saying, wait, so that actually works really well. And that game actually is great for people, that basically want to go deeper into that realm. Because remember one thing, and I'll stop there. Even in FIFA, you don't have to play FIFA Ultimate Team. Yes, most of the people are playing this. It's the core of the game. It's hardcore. But it's also a problem in some way because the game is losing a lot of this casualness about this easy entry, into a game, which is a fantastic football game. Then you go hardcore into FUT, into spending money into the packs, etc. Again, which I find is fine. You can decide if you want or not. But you can see that there's a need. And let's remember that Web3 or the blockchain technology is a technology before being a business. And I think it's been the problem mostly about the past 6 months, years or whatever. A lot of people made it a business before making a technology that creates immense innovation, that opens amazing doors into making better products. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, making good products. And I always tell my teams, it's about making great experiences, great games, before it's Web3, mobile, PC, whatever you want to, layers of tech or that you want to put into it. It's got to be a good game.
Another sector that's a hard nut to crack when it comes to Web3 is football, really. And your target audience is exactly the intersection between the passionate football fans and then the Web3 enthusiasts. In reality, you can't make football fans excited about Web3, and you absolutely cannot convince someone to be a football fan if they're not already supporting a team, right? I am an example of your perfect user. I'm a football fan. I go to stadiums. I watch football, but I'm also a Web3 enthusiast. I collect NFTs. But to be honest, I don't know many people with my interests, exactly my interests. So I have the feeling that this is a very, very niche industry. So I'm just wondering, what are you doing to increase demand and adoption? And can you actually do that at all?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Daisy. So a few things here. One, you're right. What you mentioned is the intersection that we're talking at, we want to talk to. This intersection today is not that big. First, why are we doing that? Because that's today. In 2, 3, 4 years from now, and that's the kind of timeline we need to talk about here, because things don't happen overnight. Again, trying to make a business before being a technology that can change a lot of things. That's critical. These remain factors of mass adoption. gaming, football in general. Web3, no, again, don't ask someone to understand the technology. That's also the problem, right? We try to sometimes sell the technology, not the product. And at one point you lose 99% of the world at that point, because, they're like, well, give me a product and honestly work out the technology you want behind, because I'm not that, interested into that technology. And my mom or my grandmother, may love football, may be interested into doing that, go into it. But, they're playing Candy Crush, let's say, on mobile or whatever that is. But they're not going to go there because honestly, the barrier to entry is just incredibly high. So adoption and mass adoption, is critical for Web3 in general, for that technology. It will come through major sports, I think, major entertainment medium, that's gaming in that case. So these are incredible vectors in order to do that. I also think today that football is broken.
Why is
because
that?
Football today, you'll see. So I piqued your interest here. But the why is it broken? Because I think that football is getting further and further away from their fans. And it's becoming more and more of a massive business. We've all seen that. Some teams aren't, but you can see today that, and even the competition is becoming more and more elitist in some ways. So the Sunday game, which you can go with your kid and have a good time and have a drink, a beer, a sandwich, and go home, is kind of dying. And also is dying. Why? Because it's getting very expensive. Because getting into a stadium is hell of expensive, let alone being in a VIP box. VIP boxes are full of marketing directors and important people and that stuff. But there's actually, the last time there's actually a fan that has access, he needs to win a goddamn lottery. And even then, so all this becomes incredibly expensive. And, so to me, yes, you can watch home, and home is also a completely fragmented, bouquet of offers. You need to change every 6 months because now this TV does, or this channel and not that channel and this, and it's very fragmented. So today you'd say that, yes, we're talking to a small portion of people to a certain extent, but we actually want to talk to 5 billion football fans. Yeah. That's the people we need to talk to. And when I say that football is broken, is because the newer generation is actually not that interested by football. And football has not done anything to really make it interesting for them as much, right? And clubs are very focused on their own business. They're very short-term focused. They don't usually, build. Some clubs do it well, but most of the clubs don't build ecosystems, platforms, digital platforms to engage, with their fans, and for their fans to engage with the club. So, and you see clubs boasting millions and millions of fans. Well, some of the times actually looking at, social network only, they don't know these people. They don't really know who's sitting in the stadium, except the people that, maybe the socios, system would actually help that, and they would. But even then, so to me, when I say broken, I love football. But I say broken because I don't think that football today is really thinking through the different federations, clubs, leagues, players in some ways, about their fans as much, about what they get, about what they own, about, and at the end of the day, it's for them. It's for no one else, right? You can go and say it's a business, but now it's becoming a kind of a bit of a closed circle. Of the rich, ultra rich clubs, etc. I wouldn't say that Web3 is going to change all that. But what I say is that in some ways, Web3 or the experiences that we want to build, we're building and we want to build next, would allow fans to consume football a different way, to get closer to football and to probably feel more engaged into their clubs, their leagues, etc. We work today with the leagues, the clubs in Europe, like, we talk Serie A, Bundesliga, that's OneFootball. But in general, and 27 pro players. And so there's a lot of stuff we can do. And I think that Web3 can do. But again, there's some really cool ideas. There's some rug pulls. There's some stuff which aren't nearly as good. But I think the promise is there.
Yeah, I cannot relate more to what you just said about football not being about fans and the ordinary people anymore. my son is, he's 7-year-old. He's obsessed with Chelsea. This is his favorite football team. So to take him to a football game, which usually costs me between £600 and £700. So how can you expect this young person, to go regularly to football matches if this would cost probably £1,500 for his parents to just bring him to home games, right? It is completely insane. And going back to your point with who we are building for and what we are building in Web3, I have this feeling that we are definitely building for the consumers who are still at school. And what I mean by that, I mean, going back to my son again, I can absolutely see him happily spending his pocket money for a digital collectible on FIFA that he would be obsessed about and really proud to share. But there is no way I can explain to my dad what NFT is. I don't know, he lost it. I'm not trying this anymore again. So what do you think is the immediate future of Web3 in sports, let's say in the next probably a year? And where do you see it going in the next 5, 6, 7 years?
So first, I think we need to democratize that technology as much as possible. And what it brings, and not try to get people to understand or Google what NFT means. This is a bad start to just go into when you're interested in any type of product. So we need to really make this something that has value, utility, fun, because we're talking still about experiences, gaming and stuff, which is actually about fun, and sports is fun, and kind of being a fan is at the end of the day getting through a lot of emotions, and it becomes a religion. Football is one of the few that people call a religion, right? You don't even sometimes hear that from other sports, but for football, there's something a bit, even deeper there. So I think it's really important to really get in our, the communication. If you look at any other, experiences today on Web3, the barrier is still super high, and you need to create, a wallet, and you need to own a wallet, and you need to then that's already, and you go through, KYC, and you need to go through that, and you need to go through. The friction is tremendous. The friction still today is super, super big. I remember, when I worked on VR, so I worked on virtual reality for years. I'm sorry, but you'll see the parallel. And I kept saying guys, as long as for people put this on like a scuba diving suit, then we're not gonna get any breakthrough with VR. The form factor has to evolve tremendously in order to really become something that people don't think twice about jumping in, right? And then it becomes something super cool. Everything before that, you can't really call it a business yet. You can try, you can dabble with it, but then it's you're still waiting for that, artistic adoption because form factor, because a lot of things need to evolve. So there's really a thing that needs to, and despite all the difficulties that the crypto Web3 is going through at the moment, we as product makers need to focus on what is the most important, is user experience, product fun, experience quality, like all the stuff which, then we'll one day remove all the barriers, and people will go and say, "Oh, yeah, that's awesome. I want to, be able to own a piece of football and use that into a game and something I own, and maybe that I can keep for 1 year, 2 years, for all my life, but I can use different times in the year, etc." So there's so much you could do, if we again bring it back to, the people. It's silly to say, and no one's stupid here. A consumer is extremely smart. But again, they don't want to make the extra effort to put on a scuba diving suit or to go through 15 steps if you're not just a degen, crypto fan, in order to get there. And that's, and you already see some super interesting models. I think, the way Reddit approached it was actually really smart, really good. They knew they had the right community. And overnight, they got people to opt in, a wallet, a crypto wallet, and they started offering to these people some things and say, if you're not interested, that's absolutely fine. For the ones that want to get a little deeper, hey, come and do this, or come and do this with us. And actually that turned into super good results, from what I've seen, at least externally. So you can see already cases here. Yes, they're not in the newspaper because newspaper are usually calling out the bad stuff, but there's actually really good stuff happening and some really great strides towards making that a lot more accessible.
Looking into the future, what do you think is going to be the penny drop moment for the NFT space? I know you don't like the term. I just use it, in the interest of this conversation, just to keep us focused. I mean, I think one of the reasons why there's been so much kind of negativity and NFTs really, unfortunately, failed miserably in the last few months, it's been the lack of practical application that you've just been talking about of this technology. While in reality, there are so many possibilities in front of us. They just haven't been realized yet for some reason. If you look back, you mentioned AI and VR earlier. If you look back, like AI didn't mean much for many people a few years ago. That's cool to play, but we just forget the next day. Until ChatGPT appeared, right? And a few other powerful tools. And now people are like, now I get how this is going to change my life. When do you think we're going to experience this sort of aha moment for the NFT industry? And I'm not saying, this exists. I think we can just really try to predict the future and give examples of really practical application of the technology.
I think so. One thing I would say first is we need to be cautious, because I know that right now, there's a lot of negativity around Web3 and around NFTs, to your point, etc. And, people will go all the way to calling it a scam, etc. We got to be cautious there, I think, because let's not throw the baby with the bathwater. I think that there's actually really good applications today, of NFTs, and not just the thing which is again the leading stories of people making a bunch of money, losing 2 million, winning this, the floor price of NFTs going through, going down to almost zero, etc. Let's also look at all, the NFTs that are making a change in health system, in loyalty programs. There is, to your point, it always comes back to value, utility. Utility is a keyword for me every time, and say whatever we build, what is the value for a user, and the beauty is to think as an ecosystem. A lot of people also go for a one shot, and probably just to make money so they don't have to work for 5 years after that and do something else. That's not going to help anyone, right? Let's be honest, that's not going to help anyone. And I've got examples everywhere. Some people, honestly, and I think Animoca is one of them, very much kind of thinking of, okay, it's great now, and they're always thinking about the next thing. What is it going to be next year and the year after, etc. And they're not looking for the big win. They're looking for real innovation that will have a real impact on our day-to-day lives. And let's remember that all the biggest changes took a lot of time. And even at the time saying, a smartphone, what am I going to do with a smartphone? And even maybe phone and stuff, like call someone. But to your point, it then becomes that I guess, penny money or moment or tipping point. It's probably a better one, at least for me, so I would call that a tipping point. I would say that from what I've seen today, we're not that far out, meaning that, we need to go through the crisis we're going through. And by the way, that crisis is not just Web3 crypto. And I think we can talk about a world economical crisis. Let's also make it very clear here. So again, it's easy to hate on that innovation that a lot of people were negative about, but I think the problem today is much larger for what our world is facing. Like, we should also keep that in mind. I would say in a few years, we could see some real aha moments. Even though I'm saying there are some now that people, not probably, I know there are some now. But yeah, I think that really aha moment of people saying, okay, so it's not just, I don't know, a video highlight that I can see on YouTube, but no, it's something that really, make a difference of what I'm doing. Understand that there is like an ecosystem play into that. There's a longer play, which in game I would call that a meta game, or something that's like, an extra layer of, this is why I can do all this, etc. Some people don't realize today that the most robust loyalty programs today are powered by blockchain. That's why you see a lot of the big players, big companies start getting towards, a fiat to crypto wallet, start getting to an identity 3.0, a loyalty program that's based on this, which is powered by blockchain, because again, it offers, everything that blockchain offers in terms of trackability, in terms of security, in terms of, at least for the identity information, and also the ecosystem play where the person can decide to, open up his profile in some ways, but control its user data. Because let's remember that today, that's not the case, right? Like, there's still that question where the new generation want to have control and customize what people can see, what they cannot, what I get from it. And you've got a much more savvy, youth today on what they, on how they want to control personal data. And it's still a very big question. We may have forgotten, as I said, by whatever is in the news, but there is still something massive about the idea that decentralization and then, of this information, security, trackability, whatever you want to, go after, but not to use too many, again, crypto or Web3 terms. I'm trying to avoid it. Otherwise, it's easy to just give to people concepts and like, yeah, okay, well, what does that mean again? But there's really a way for people to control, protect, or open their personal data if they wish to. Let's remember that today that's not the case. Your personal data are being used, whether you want it or not, by a few things you've clicked when you started using a social network or other well-used tools out there.
Going back to sports, fan engagement is the backbone of sports industry, right? So is the case with Web3, NFTs, DAOs. It is all about communities and people being excited about your project, whatever the project is. And I'm a huge believer in many of the projects that could be struggling at the moment. So I'm getting a bit impatient why we are not seeing more practical application of this technology in sports. For example, why is my season ticket not in the form of NFT yet? And why I'm not being engaged as a fan by the football clubs directly? What do you know of any exciting projects happening in the space or opportunities that are currently being missed? Maybe you don't want to share too much from the kitchen of OneFootball Labs, I suppose. But there is so much more to explore, right?
For sure. And I would tell you, Daisy, that we're exploring. We can't indeed share everything, but we're 100% exploring. Ticketing is really interesting. Of course, we've seen that, in other industries already. There's something interesting there, and you can go into, proof of attendance and stuff like that. So that opens up doors that, again, tracking, knowing who's in the stadium, what they're doing, you being able to really tell friends, whoever, that you're there, you've done this, etc. It is a loyalty program. It's the start of it already, right? For you to be able to, instead of putting your tickets into a box since the age of you're 6 and you're like, this is all the Chelsea games I went to. Well, in some ways, Web3 allows you to track that to your whole life. And this is what I've done. This is where I was. And and you meet your wife down the road and say, oh, you were in seat 34 and I was in seat 25. I'm kidding, but you know what I mean? It's possible. And at that point, blockchain opens up this kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, really interesting. So, you don't have to be a genius to know that ticketing is an interesting piece. For me, for labs, and, it's going to be a lot about engagement experiences, to your point. Gaming, to me, is a big thing. And that's why I think, and I believe strongly that gaming can also gamification, right? It can start with a simple quiz or do you know football or that type of stuff and getting into it, but all the way to like a full-on game, which can change the face of the way you play a football game. Again, we're talking to specific generations, right? Whoever I talk to, you may go and be like, I'm not that much into games. Fair, but I can tell you something is the new generation. It's not about whether you are or not. It's what do you play? And there's no question around, and male, female. Let's remember that, since we just had the International Women's Day. So a big hi to all women out there, by the way, my wife, my daughter, you, Daisy, and everyone in our team. But, half of the gamers are female. 50% are female. and at all levels. And now you've got esport, you've got some of the best players out there are female players. So I'm just saying that it's not just niche to say that. It's not, gaming or football gaming is not niche. So selfishly, that's why, we're actually very keen on this. But to your point, we're also looking at working a lot closer with the clubs, the leagues, the federations, the players, in order to create experiences for them to engage more with their fans, for their fans to get to feel a lot closer to their favorite player. Because, when you're, a fan of Chelsea and a fan of some of the players at Chelsea, can you say that you really feel close to them? Can you say that sometimes there's really, and is there ways to do it? And that's the question we should ask ourselves. And that's what you said, fan experiences, etc. So we are today, in that ecosystem, thinking about not just creating games which are standalone and fine, you play on your mobile or on your PC and have fun, but also experiences with the ecosystem on how do we, help the clubs to build some of the platform that they need in order to do that. So we need to go and not just be a product maker, we also need to be an ecosystem enabler. I think that's the big piece. We need to go and speak to these different clubs, leagues, players, as I said, and federations to say, hey, let's stop also with the one-shots. Because that's a big thing where sometimes when I say, I get a lot of, whether closed doors or just, give us the money. We need to buy players and win the next league, which makes sense. That's what they do. But we also need to get the clubs to understand that there's more to it than just 12 months, that it's a longer play, that they have to think now as digital platforms. And some of them, did it, and I'm not going to name any. It's going to put me in trouble. But some of the clubs already are thinking the right way. Like very much, and say, okay, they're already thinking platform approach, ecosystem, etc. And some are like, who cares?
Right. That was going to be my next question, to give me an example of the early adopters that we should admire, look at. But I can sense that you're not going to share
No,
this.
but I mean, it's we've already created a few, super cool experiences with the players, for instance, and we worked with some super cool players, Davis at Bayern Munich, Gnabry at Bayern Munich, Varane, and Vinny Jr. and some others. And we've done some really cool stuff where these people really want to get closer to their people and want to try and see. I would say, like, I love Davis, left back or left midfield, depending, for Bayern Munich. He's super cool. He's super close to his community. He's engaged into many different projects. He's super open and listens to us saying, like, what do you guys think we should build? Well, we should do that. And that'd be like, oh, that's a really good idea. Or maybe we could do this. And some people then are already thinking their own digital platform, right? Because they are. A player is not just, hey, here's the last news on Instagram and, get into that lottery and you're going to get the next jersey. Okay. And then you've got 1 million people trying to anyway. And, it's just not really engagement. So there's really ways to do it. And for players, so I would give a big wing to Davies because I think he's absolutely awesome. And we had the chance to work very closely with him. But who else I would say? In clubs, I mean, no, I'm not going to mention clubs probably. But some clubs are a lot smarter about thinking digital and having a very strong digital, strategy. And they've already thought about it before, and they have, resources against it, etc. And then the higher you go, because you go player, you go teams, and then you go leagues, it's starting to become a lot slower on what you can and cannot do. It's a lot of, it's a bit of a legal nightmare at one point. Not a nightmare, but just like, they also need to go to the clubs, etc. And again, remember that football is nowhere near as centralized in terms of decision making and legal, etc., as American sports, for instance. And yes, it's one country, but it's big leagues. But if you work with NBA, or if you work with, MLB, baseball, etc., MLS, for that matter, as a football actually organization, is a lot more centralized in a way that the clubs follow more what they say. They try to represent the club the best way they can. It's usually a bit of a healthier ecosystem than sometimes what you see in Europe. Again, without naming any specifically, but it's just very fragmented. That's how football has grown in Europe, and that's a difficulty then when you go into leagues and even federations, in order for them to really think longer term ecosystem and getting closer to their fans.
Right, yeah. I mean, when you mentioned that, now I'm thinking, if we think about NBA Top Shots, it was and it still is such a successful project. While when we think about football, European football, even all the leagues now are spread between different companies. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, it's a healthy competition. But I suppose it suggests that the industry, it is still in its infancy. We're still experimenting, we're still building, we're still trying to find out what is going to excite fans, right?
I was just about to say, it's also there that you have the problem of everyone shooting in the same direction, because then you're going to have a league that says, blue, and another league says red, a team that says green, and yet another team that says black, and usually you're like, okay, if I build something for you, but you're not interested, or you're not thinking that way, and you're thinking very short term, while you have actually the right strategy. So that's what I mean by being also ecosystem enablers. We need, and it's probably part of our responsibility, was part of your question or your initial question, is really to help the ecosystem to start working together. It's funny, some people say, coming new to football, say, doesn't it take two teams to play a game? So can these teams just align in some ways on how we do things so everyone can benefit from the sport everyone loves? Practically, it's not as easy. We actually end up with a lot of closed doors.
Yeah, I can see it could be a struggle to onboard new players for sure. It's been a turbulent year for the whole industry, really. Many companies have been struggling, and unfortunately, OneFootball hasn't been an exception. You had to let go of quite a lot of people recently. It was in the news. Tell me what you learned from the highs and lows of the past year.
Yeah. Very good question. I think, one of the main learnings is that we're still on unstable ground. You don't have to be a genius to say that we're still, an unstable ground, especially, as I said, where the whole tech industry is impacted. We just had actually bad news today from Meta, and as a second or third wave, and that happens across, tech, but across the world, to be honest, like tech because we're close to it, but across the world. So, there's recalibration happening at the moment for a world and for us, an industry that's still very unstable. And we need to be careful, as I said before, saying that, don't call it a business before it's one. Don't treat it as a business before it is one. And it's really still a matter today of focusing on the innovation, focusing on the user experience, focusing on, to your point, the tipping point or the product that will actually bring all of a sudden more people to it, right? There was an epiphany moment with Axie Infinity in gaming. Is that the final evolution of a Web3 game? Absolutely not. But it actually showed people and say, wait, there's something there. But would you say, oh, that's it, we have a business? No. Again, they have one. Awesome. Actually, that's one of the kind of aha moments. But we need to keep working and not just also all jump on it and say, okay, let's do Axie Infinity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One, because it won't work, because it's not a business which you can scale yet, or replicate, I should say. So to me, that's the biggest learning, and something where we all need to remain very humble, very unsure in a healthy way. Because that means that every morning when you wake up, you still need to think about, am I building the right thing? Am I answering a real need for consumers out there? Is the quality of my experience top notch for today's landscape? And, you can't just, build everything. But, as, crypto wallets are getting much and much better, easier, as loyalty programs are developing, etc., as the different chains are making it easier and more transparent for people to build on it, etc., then all these pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together, keep coming together. And us at one point as product makers need to just start making sense of that puzzle. I need to start. That's our responsibility, is to go and say, okay, so I get this, I get that piece, I can work with that piece. Now, how does that, am I painting this? Probably colors, I should say. Is my painting starting to look like something that, people will start being interested in? And as I said, don't always think business or don't always think revenue or right away, right? You can take association, health. You can say, there's many more applications than just trying to go and say, hey, let's go get the next buck we can. That's the hard reminder, and I think a very healthy one in an industry that still need to mature and still need to press the right buttons. So that's a big learning to me. Another one I would say is, you're right. It's great now to jump into the football ecosystem and realize the forces that at play. How we're gonna cut through, the difficulties. A fragmented industry, interest. Short-term interest over long-term plans. Like, these are the stuff we need to really think about and say, okay, it's our responsibility to keep pivoting. I don't like pivoting, but it feels again like you're trying to make the next startup, but rethinking your design, your product, your user experience until you can really keep making progress, and at one point hit that tipping point.
It is such a valid point, what you say about creating products that meet a real need. It is so hard, almost impossible for the majority of the products. What they're trying to do is create demand. You can't fake it, right? It goes back to what does the user really need? What are the jobs to be done? It's an old school traditional product marketing approach, but even in Web3, we have to go back to the basic and think, what we are doing at the moment, is it really serving a real need? Does it excite the user? Or are we just trying to force demand and make people excited about something just because we thought it's a cool idea, right?
Exactly. The ones that will win are the ones that will really take this as a marathon.
Right.
And that really believe, and that's why, you can think about, everyone is comparing to the internet bubble, the, early 2000s, etc., where it took time to come back, etc. But every time it cleans up the industry a bit more. And every time it's like, the bad apples tend to go away. The ones that really believe in this keep going. They're being smart about the cost structure that they have in their startups and company. They know that they should not create or show, hockey stick revenue in 6 months. And if they do, it's probably a one shot. So it's the whole ecosystem also have to go and say, okay, you know what? There's still quite a bit of work to be done. So the ones that really think long term, innovations, trying, without necessarily every time making people pay a fortune that then feels like that was a scam, and whether it's right or wrong, but we have we've seen that over the past few years. These people will win. These companies will absolutely win, especially in time of crisis, usually, where some people will just turn to whatever the next thing because they want quick money to a certain extent. They would, the ones staying, will reap the rewards at the other end of the tunnel.
What are some of your favorite projects in the space outside of the OneFootball Labs world and probably outside of digital collectibles space?
It's tough to say. I've got many. I probably won't mention a few, otherwise it may, some may, I don't know.
We get it.
But, but I mean, there's different cool projects. I think I like. Well, all I'll say is I'm a big fan of a few of Animoca's approach, and some of the. So I'll tell you to go look at what they do, and I think they've got a few super interesting projects. I think Animoca is one that really think long term, thinks ecosystem, and think like if you listen to Yad or Robbie or these people, I think they really have the right approach. I personally feel, which is why I feel close to them. But they're far from the only ones there, and they are. I'm really interested by projects that today, make a difference in nowadays world. I talked about health. I talked about education. There's super good education, projects out there, Web3 education projects. I think this is massive. I think this is something that can really change education moving forward. So I'm not going to mention specific projects, but I will tell you that, health and education are particularly interesting for me.
Interesting.
That's my way of not answering. Sorry.
You kind of answered.
Yeah.
I could extract something useful. And if you could launch one product tomorrow, imagine no money limit, no time limitation, what would it be? It could be anything, even outside of Web3.
If I'm able to, that's the next game I've got in mind, of course. And I've got, there's several concepts I've got in mind, which I think can really make a difference in terms of fun, technology, innovation, like democratization of Web3. So I think like a real flagship, game for Web3. That would be what I would do, because obviously that's what I know how to do best, I guess. So that's the piece where I'd be very, very keen on doing. Me, selfishly.
I'm looking forward to playing this game. It's been an absolute
Me
pleasure
too.
meeting you, JC, and having this conversation with you. Very interesting insights from the OneFootball Lab kitchen, but also from your brain. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
And before I let you go, I have to find out which is your favorite football team.
That's a tough one. That at EA, I was never able to say it, because since I was one of the game maker, we can't say who we like, etc. All I can say is that it's French European capital.
Okay.
Actually, that doesn't make any sense. No, I wanted to say a really big European capital, and then I wanted to say French. So anyway, it's a PSG.
Okay. That was the long way of saying PG.
I was trying to get away from it, but I failed miserably.
The Product Show is brought to you by Pony, a design studio helping startups and scale-ups build and optimize their digital products at speed. Check pony.studio to learn more.